Okay.
Code is lowercase w, 9, capital E, lowercase k, capital M, 3.
Wait. No, the other number.
And Fremd is con first.
Yeah. Alright, everyone get a start. It's in. There's an overview, and in case, you can throw the overview on the same page.
Pretty good.
Okay, judges. Alright, cool. Interpretation. Public form when the negative seem to speak first. The burden of the negative is proof desirability of resolution. I get preliminary office just links to the rest. Anything else destroys classroom education allowing the app. Speak second, mood or office by reading either a specific plan text or reading hey app does not affirm the resolution. Does not include links to the app, just the links to the rest, not the app, or in the first speech of the only burden of the negative. Now, okay. The app's focus on human intentionality driving warfare is wrong. Violence is not downstream of human control over weapons as tools. Weapons themselves inside transform desires within humans and shape human activity and behaviors. Measure 17. Who with the knife is not what stabs someone or something, is a shooter, emergency from encounter with a weapon, this inside to transform reaction within humans enables weapon to produce or use weapon to be unsafe first, and then needs to operate desire only second, these instruments of violence, simon image of weapons, and higher supporting the use of weapons and human intentionality simultaneously overstates the role of human interest in achieving the function of weapons, understates the form of the powers of weapons, and generating human content discourse by human intentionality, create highly productive ruse, form camouflage, disguise weapons, display for you to recreate the conditions of regeneration. I are focused on how different actions deploy weapons and institutional patterns. Weapons are defined by distinct effective potential with exert informative influence social life rather than passive instruments of violence. Weapon not merely impact human calculation, facility, political violence, but actively contribute to the production of subjectivity, security, warfare. Anthropocentric state-focused theorization ignores that the ontology of weapons exceeds state control. Who should deploy troops is unanswerable without rethinking agency and childhood. Cannot answer who should control war-making without first answering if war-making controls us. Night 23. Political analysis does not take sufficient account of materiality. Anthropocentric views imply complete subordination of weapons to human beings. Military attack machine can sample just determine the very ontology of weapon inextricable from one another. I as a question of agency. Questions are crucial to rethink, challenge our understanding of the relationship between armaments and man. Agency of weapon exceeds limitations that states try to place on them. Existing agents of violence, the capabilities usually cannot be contained and controlled by the state or individuals that are in war machine radically exterior to the apparatus of the state. This mistheorization creates a martial gauge which funnels warfare through an anthropocentric lens for its inner planning. Techniques of war represent domination, control via human oversight and approval, intensifies violent global expansion, doomed to failure. Grove 19. Monothing is a martial thing. He becomes obsessed with that. Like, that can be seen in narrow anthropocentric sense, durable obstacles to technical dreams, experts and obstacles of the deployment of dangerous and destructive techniques, abstract machines, their concrete actualization, taking on life for their own words, not being waged lab towards the development of weapons, the development of the next logistics breakthroughs become the whole purpose of war through its recursive relationship with the advancement technique. Martial gaze evolves in lethality, overestimates capability, results continuing global expansion of the capacity to inflict convoluted corresponding benefits, war moleculated via the sophistication of the martial gaze, but distribution of these are further from view. This generalized anthropocentric extinction reps are historically disproven and ensure propagation of genocidal and instinctive logics. The app is doomed by their own hubris and false sense of control of material savages. Grove 19. Attempts to make a claim on the whole of the human species assume that if humanity faces impending doom, the case for saying humanity will follow the assumptions off the mark of politics for the past 500 years proof the opposite. There's a centuries-long investment in deployment of techniques to ensure that survival is only ever right for some. Advance the banal appeal to the universal humanity for reform like interruptions. Other relations have threatened existence, self-interruption and form of life kills people and frequently cascades and genocides and extinctions. The alternative is to reject the app's anthropocentric narrative war and value to the ground through a flat ontological lens that treats weapons as material assemblages as co-constitutive violence with human actors only refusing the direction of war to human intention can disrupt their martial gaze that sustains militarized engagement. Bride 10. Flat ontology signifies an ontology in which there's only one ontological type. Individuals, flat ontology refuses to undermine or overmine objects, undermining that operation moves the thing or attempts to dissolve the objects in something deeper, of which the object is said to be an unreal effect. Flat ontology is vigorous rejection of the sort of reductivism takes the objects are composed of other objects. The role of the ballot is for the team which best deconstructs anthropocentric subjectivities. It's the only risk of solving anything. The app's been tried before and will be tried again, but only the neg explains serial policy failures. The ontological makings of knowledge and policy about objects are a prior question. Bryant and Harmon 11. Prior to even posing the questions of how, whether, and what we know would be known is already situated among differences, and therefore follows that epistemology cannot be first philosophy, insofar as knowledge presupposes epistemological comprehension of difference. Knowledge can only come second in relation to the ontological priority of difference. There can be no knowledge and there's no actual engagement with difference. Our framework interpretation is about the theory of power of the app for its hypothetical consequence. Refer one sequence exists that every app impact push is linked to decay. The scenarios will prove the interpretation management politics of objects have failed. The app cannot justify links to decay, outweighing our impacts unless it be the theory of power. Improve the solvency is possible. It's a technical requirement to an ontology before framing. Chief foundations is that unethically grounded policy should be rejected for the violent assumptions. Interrogating discourse is inextricable from the subjectivities the app constructs. The app must be responsible for the whole of the world created, not just their scenarios. Anything else justifies good policy that helps some and kills others along invisible ethical splits. 3. Indices and misunderstanding ontology. Doom solvency means the app can never work in the sense that they're all the same indicts every warrant card and impact automatically presume negative if the app is wrong about how the world works because the solution will fail. Underview. All responses to the next speech. 1. The K determines our ability to solve any impact, which means the prior question. 2. Resolvability. Otherwise, we have less speeches resolve the K debate, forcing judgment, eventually increasing the likelihood of violent subjectivities, which outweighs because A destroys the constitutive purpose of the K debate, and B takes the time out of the debate out of our hands.
Okay, we'll take prep.
Alright.
Start. Now. Yeah. Just hand it. Alright, we're good. 124 prep. Set it up. Just hand it to me when you want to begin, right? The order will be an app contention and then their case. It'll start on framework and then top down.
Our framework.
No, our framework.
Your framework?
Our framework interpretation, your framework, and then your case. Okay. I just sent it out.
Okay.
Yeah. Tyler. This right here.
Sorry, mine's being a little slow. Okay. The order is app,
Case.
framework K.
Yeah, case, our framework, your framework, K.
Alright.
Are we good?
Yep.
Contention 1 is PQD, the political question doctrine could easily robustly applied to foreign affairs, but facilitate geo abstention on political grounds. Empirics by talking 7 course 3 foreign affairs, generally controls for all the factors, large data set, multivariate symptoms, and stronger evidence, classification, argue foreign affairs, normalizes as well as if the evidence suggests continuing acceptance to this foreign affairs cases when exact strikes against without conquerors, all corporal great motion dismissed on political grounds, and 1 ruling means every person's status for political questions. Apps 16W, PRB, every definition of political question, Baker, text equipment to Congress, need for policy determination, digital lack of respect for other branches, need to stand by, addition to the choose possibly embarrassment. 3, 1 ruling is enough for doctrinal class. 5, 16 limits on course with residence, the Constitution directors provide justification deference, compelling enforcement. In any case, it would class separation of power, and Trump will drop NATO hold for natural forces. NATO after meeting with Secretary General of which is the openly integrating American withdrawal after they reject his constitutional border law is beyond consideration. The little stop and stance, and private actors sue and courts can self-withdraw. But PQE lets them dismiss the case. The act removes it, which forces ruling that keeps us NATO proudly. 4, 3 against Trump. Full automated view by political question. Congress lose money. After harm. Necessary standing the most difficult issues. Big doctrines, political question. Of course, applying doctrine regularity to this difficult for an fair case and withdrawal. There's mass proliferation acts. 18 league NATO would force the U.S. all of the workers and nukes. America made it unnecessary. Europe to possess just to UK France possess America's nuclear shield. Article 5, huh? Article 5 applies to nuclear strike with France. In UK, so the war has deterrence conflict without America. Cut the card at America. Framework. Interpretation of the impacts of the app versus the competitive alternative links what's unique and the consequences of the app. Anything less than critique, any underlying portion of the 1AC causes rush to the most obscure section of the library. It turns defense the opposite unpredictable and non-despicable. It also moves formats to 1AC, which goes fairness to clash, fairness to vote in outweighs. A is efficient to gain. Nobody would do debate if we always lost, which turns the subjectivity offense because the game must exist in the first place to spread change. B is a fairness paradox. Anything outweighs fairness is paradoxical because the argument relies on fair evaluation. Independently, if they don't care about fairness, then drop your pen and hack against them. Z is valid proximity. It's unverifiable. What happened after this round, but you know you value yourself unfairness in this round and clashes the voter. A, it turns our offense. Clashing over consequences is more real world and trains debaters be better advocates for the rest of their lives, which outweighs their offense. But a short time in debate, B is false positives. Even if they win the K, it was only because we were ill prepared to answer, so presume act on a risk of offense. Their framework. 1. On the first, they set framework out sequences and clash is key to test their models. We've proved their model is unpredictable. You have to vote out on presumption that was done above. 2. The second, they set judge choice solves in-round abuse. Anything else allows racist debaters to outcheck their opponents, increase false accusation, which is violent. Independently, rep are determined by consequences because, for example, the only reason we know slavery is bad is because it has bad consequences. So testing the negatives reps is key. Now, the third, they said this is predicated on us answering ontology, which we would anyways, and clash comes first. And they cannot read sweeping claims or epistemology without reading specifically defense because tech over truth means a dropped argument is true. First, rolled them out is to vote for the better debating. Anything else intervention is arbitrary and links are under their model means we outweigh. Now, the first line 1, we've not said human intentionally drives warfare. Our argument is that in the unintentionally caused warfare, through miscalculation, pressure for proliferation. 2, no subjectivity shift is empirically disproven by cognitive dissonance in all causes. Liberto. 25, arguments have no meaningful effect. Acceptance that do not get in the way of more effective political thinking. Debates has no impact on opinions. Tracking 100,000 respondents. Cognitive dissonance. We all rationalize the whole and beliefs ourselves keep us operating. The most important reason is other social relations in our own actions. Friends change beliefs not by arguing, but simply by being around us. And psychoanalysis is infinitely regressive, non-falsifiable, and too abstract. Gordon, 01, psychoanalysis degrades scholarship in action, ends in discourse analysis. There can be no testing priorities, driving ideas in the conscious of patients outside. There can be no just verification process outside to encounter anything can be true. Cut the Paris evidence for now. And their second card is a double turn with the first card. It says the weapons exceeding state control is bad, but the first one says framing weapons as controlled by humans is good. And turn, we solve anthropocentric weaponizing that exceeds our control by preventing proliferation and restraining Trump. 2, growth is wrong. No more where we are premised on domination and control. And if we win sovereignty, it means to turn their arguments. 4, we don't agree with anthropocentrism. We are critiquing it by saying that we're critiquing it by saying that the state is not doing enough, so we obviously have criticized the state. And 5, extinction reps are good because they remind us our shared humanity breeds empathy. And extinction outweighs on magnitude universally. They said that you should evaluate the desirability of the outcomes from the consequences must outweigh. And independently on the alt one perm, do both perm do the aft, do the length, the alt perm do the aft, and then the alt permutation double blind. If the alternative cannot either the alternative can overcome the least of the aft or cannot solve, so the alt fails. Anything else?
Finish this part.
Okay. It causes extinction to Bala, come to the unstable CNC, this is on case by the way, joint nationalist hostility leaders, lessons against escalation strategies, internet defensive and pure provocative applied, preemption is perceived there under an attack, assume reliable intelligence, speed of nukes, post the deliberate first strike as prevented war and avert escalation out of professional accidental use of nukes. How much time do you have? I think we'll get to start.
Yeah. Alright. Good for cross.
Yeah.
Alright. You say that your argument is that there's an unintentional miscalculation. Explain how your idea that switching the power of who can deploy military forces from one set of humans to the next is not a link to the critique.
Sorry, what? Explain.
Okay, explain your first response on the K and how unintentionally causing a miscalc means that you're not linking to this critique.
Well, we've not said that humans intentionally cause warfare.
That's not what I said.
Like,
That's
okay,
not the
wait, first of all,
thesis the
explain the link to the critique really quick. I think that's kind of
Okay, the link to the critique that this is contesting is the idea that your assumption within your affirmative argument is that switching the control of weapons and deployment of troops from one person to another, from Trump to Congress, can suddenly solve impacts, and that is anthropocentric and human focused.
Why is that
human
anthropocentric?
intentionality?
Why is it human focused? And also,
Because
why isn't holding Trump accountable human focused?
Again, it's not your argument is that switching weapons from one human to another can solve impacts. We have contested that very assumption and said that that is not the correct way to evaluate offense.
Okay, so what is the correct way to evaluate offense?
Our alternative is flat ontological lens, which says that we should view weapons and humans on the same ontological level, because then we are able to see how weapons incite desires
So
within
how do we
humans.
regulate weapons in the world of the alternative?
Again, it's about viewing the world through a lens of
So
flat
do you
ontology.
feel that everyone changes their minds and views weapons?
No, wait, it's not about fiat, right? You have made an argument through a lens that is problematic and can never solve impacts and leads to extinction inevitably. We have just provide a counter mindset that is the only risk of solving an impact.
What
now,
evidence says extinction inevitably as a result of anthropocentrism?
Okay,
the
my G's
growth evidence
and my
G's, correct.
My G's literally says that whenever we try to control weapons create desires within their users.
Correct.
Which is why you've dropped the predictive uniqueness that the last 500 years, of the world, war has only been repeated because we try to control weapons.
So why haven't those wars caused extinction?
Okay, even if they haven't caused
Yeah,
extinction,
you dropped it inevitably. Like, your own arguments are proof of that. You say extinction is on the brink now. The AF solves.
Well,
We say
that's
correct.
because
The
we
current
have
mindset.
an irrational actor, an irrational leader that's holding weapons. We think we should.
Yeah,
maintain
the
control.
irrational leader is somebody who thinks he can control weapons. This is again exactly what we've critiqued. Your arguments, your impacts are literally uniqueness for our
So
K.
if we prove solvency and Congress is not irrational and Congress does not decide.
You can't. You drop every warrant for ontology. Like, I just had to.
we might.
No,
you're not-
listen.
okay,
I had
what's-
to.
what's the
let me
warrant?
finish. I had to explain to you in Crossfire the warrant for why weapons incite transformative desires within humans, which means that you inherently cannot solve. The indict's argument says that if we are true or correct about that, it indicts the methodology and the ontological underpinnings of your argument. How are these?
solvency?
this is like
Okay, whatever. You can take a question.
Okay. What is the alternative? Actually, I already asked about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you explain why restraining, or if we prove that Congress, I think like
You
if
can't
we
prove
prove that
Okay,
Congress is
that's
less
fine.
rational.
Again,
we
like
win.
saying we can prove things is irrelevant. We've indicted every
Wait, no,
single
I think
assumption
if we can,
in
do we win?
parts.
we'll take a little bit of prep. Start it now. Yeah. What was the turn about like? how you
Exceeding
still-
state control. And the next one after that. After the psychoanalysis stuff. You said exceeding state control bad and something about solving.
Oh, because we stopped Trump from nuking people.
Is that the one about solving?
Yeah.
And so is that tied with exceeding state controls
That's
bad?
like the link term. Can you pull up what I showed?
And then what was the one about like, our evidence is contradictory?
Oh, your second part is a double term to the first part. It says that weapons exceeding state control is bad, and framing it that way is bad. Your first part does precisely that. What was your first question?
Okay, no, it's fine. We don't need any more. Okay. Yeah.
1:30. K starting on roll the ballot. I'll do framework, our framework first, their framework, the K. Actually, but it'll start really quickly on the overview and constructive. You guys good?
Yeah.
Drop no new response to the K determines our ability to solve any impact, which means it's a prior question. Now on the critique, they've just literally dropped the roll of ballots to the best to vote for the team, which best he contradict and the preceding subjectivities. The only risk of solving anything in this round because it dropped their predictive uniqueness that MIT's claims that the last 500 years of war prove that subject-oriented ontology is not wrong, which means it's risk of offense off the negative alternative. They've dropped the Bryant and Herman evidence, which follows that epistemology cannot be first, but it cannot precede like their ontological offense, which means you have to evaluate ontology first. Now on their roll about the better debate wins, they collapse to ours. Vote for the better debater under our model because we've given specific warrants about why we need to test and the preceding views, and the only way to evaluate the better debater is to evaluate ontology first, which is what the Bryant and Harmon evidence was saying. Now on the K proper, they say unintentional editing causes a miscal. Your assumption is that you can control weapons. We have said that you cannot control weapons because MIT's evidence clearly explains that weapons create desires, which is why they dropped the predictive uniqueness. It should also function as terminal defense because the Congress can never control weapons, which means it's terminal defense in Syria because MIT says that weapons create desires. Now they say no subjectivity shift. Get off the fucking blocks. We didn't read subjectivity shift, then they read psychoanalysis. We didn't read psychoanalysis. We have definitive flat ontology in this round, which is completely distinct. Now they say no empirical basis. They've dropped the MIT's evidence. evidence which has empirical studies and the night evidence which analyzes all pieces of IR in the last 500 years of history and says that war will only be inevitable if you look through the lens of subject order ontology, then say exceeding state control is bad. We did not make the argument that exceeding state control is bad. We just made the argument that the status quo thinks they can control weapons, which is bad, but the unique reason why the alternative is better is because it would grant everything as the same ontological type, and they say they turn it because they solve. That's just because Congress would be able to quote unquote like control weapons, but they've literally dropped every single word about why they would not be able to. It's because who with a knife in their head would not be able to stab something or someone, and that's literally dropped the link solvency because it says that you'll never be able to control anything. Let's say Grove is wrong. Grove is not wrong. They've dropped the predictive uniqueness and the impact claims that makes that the anthropocenic views that we are reading in this round culminates in the martial gaze, which they've dropped. It's just the uniqueness should flow negative on this question once again because war has only been repeating. They've read this affirmative once a million times. Now they say they don't agree with Anthro. They find that both of their links to the night and Marshy's evidence because they can control weapons and things like that. Then they say extinction reps are good because of magnitude. They dropped that extinction sure may be good, but analyzing extinction through subject-oriented ontology is uniquely bad because it fosters classes and divides, which justifies genocide. We say we can still solve subject or extinction just through object-oriented ontology. Then on all the perms. Who? One, every link to the case reads the perms or dimension, the alternative, the first half, the alternative is to reject, you can reject and do half. Second alt, then alt, after the alt fails. Only reorientation, the word flat orientation solve the impacts of half in the first place. Otherwise, their obsession with human control over war where it deems insolvency, that's Grove. Third, the perm fails. Correlation always attempts to think difference in one-sided fashion that produces the wrong question and shows it. It's not transformed by encounter difference. By 11, the kernel of correlation is not simply the claim that human must be included in every relation, but also the unilateral relation of the process of translation to one-sided and abstract fashion. I'll cut the card there. And the perm necessarily can't solve Brian 11. Flat showing reject any ontology is transcendence or presentence. That privilege is one sort of entity. Nothing about this established that humans must be included in every inner object link. Now on our framework. I literally just need to go for every impact push is a link to decay, which means their framework is literally a link to the critique. They've dropped the sequencing dissent that their scenarios are proof that anthropocenic management policies of objects have failed. They say the class is key to test the model. Get off the blocks once again. They can still class. They just need to prove their ontology perceives their offenders better than object-oriented ontology, which they've not dropped. They've dropped it's a technical requirement to win ontology before framing, which means I can literally concede all of their framework because they can weigh case. They just need to prove their ontology is good, which has zero warrants in your fault. Like, actually ask yourself. They did not engage with our critiques, and we also didn't read subjectivity shit. They say links must be unique to consequences. Drop typo testing, which says that the next team speaks first, we just need links to the resolution. They've read extinction and impact anyways. Now, on their case. Turns case, anthropocene treatment of hyper objects like militarism, corrupts human agency, traps discourse with academia, and early capping solvency. Grind 12. Political theory claims not to represent the world, but to will never explain the burrows of academia. We need traversal advantages to avoid this rest of repeating repetition. This entails shifting from the position of political critique to building alternatives. Academia is an operating system. It must engage in procedures to do so. These operations consist in the propagation of students, the horrifying consequences of the reason we might give for what we view have little to what's actually taking place. Perhaps we must need to reflect a little bit on ourselves and our strategy and what political theory should be about. The integration between hyper objects as being everywhere nowhere is that our ability to act becomes paralyzed. Cut the card there, which means if we become paralyzed, we never actually solve any of their scenarios. Once again, they have not given you warrants about why subject-oriented ontology is good. They've dropped their frame of interpretation completely. They can weigh case, but their ontology is wrong.
Can you send me all
Yeah,
the
I'll send the cards.
Thank you. Oh, did you send it yet?
I'm doing it right now.
Alright.
Well, it's gonna seem marked.
Let me open it. What server app? That was 1:30. We have 14 seconds left.
Did you guys say 125 first time?
I thought it was 117.
It was
No, you took 124.
Oh, okay, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, 127, we have 6 seconds left. Order will be case, our framework, decay. Can I see the table?
Say that order one more time.
Case, our framework, decay.
Case your framework decay.
Anyone not good? Panel, Fremd.
We're good.
They say anthropocentrism in academia, but our argument is just post-fiat, so obviously what we do in academia does not matter. They've also conceded no subjectivity shift, which means that they cannot use this as pre-fiat offense to explain how we get corrupted in academia. Now, Framer, they have not explained why they do not move case. Their entire argument about how they saw clash is literally our argument. They said that we need to prove our ontology before winning and win case. This is our argument. Our argument is ontology, reps, and also non-union links are all obviously unpredictable because we were researching the consequences of the plan rather than the resolution. Also, all their links are not consequential, which means that obviously this is unpredictable. Now, they said that we can weigh the case, that we just need to prove our ontology is good. This is literally our argument. They said that hypotesting means that they can just link to the resolution. If this is true, they obviously meet framework, but obviously they do not have offense because their links are all non-unique, so we'll just answer that, which means they have to go for you link, you lose. Now, extend our offense, it just dropped that clash, obviously turns cases the only way to solve anti-anthropocentric reps out there, and also false positives, which means they should presume all their arguments false before true. They've also just dropped a fairness, which means that you must just flat this on your flow and row af if they have any links to representations. They've dropped the paradox, they need a 2, which means, and it's the only impact that your ballot can solve, because you cannot do any real world change. Now, in their case, we did not drop the rule of ballot. We said that it was a vote for the better debater, and it's only an arbitrary thing. All of their arguments are tautological and the question and the rest of the debate, which means that obviously it's just a question of whether we win their ontology and other things are wrong. Now, they say we have none new responses, but yes, the response is norm and PF, which proves that they can answer, and we have new responses, it's maximize clash. We gotta justify new responses, new and rebuttal, because it's the norm, and they have not explained why we do not get to justify new responses, and you evaluate at the end of the debate, which means that obviously new responses and rebuttal are justified. Now, they say 500 years, but this is about extinction reps and about ontology, and we'll approve. Extinction reps are good because it breeds empathy in the real world, and it causes a shared global humanity, which obviously causes better things. They say that ontology first, I answer this. They say that we need a test answer first, I answer this. They say that we do not control weapons, and that it causes desires. This literally proves our argument that they rely on psycho. Their argument is that we cannot control weapons because it's a system of desire. That is inherently psychoanalytical, and they have not explained it otherwise. So any new spin would definitely be new, which means that they cannot answer this argument. The Gordon emphasis that psycho is unfalsifiable, raw, and also ahistorical. It's unempirical. There's no studies to support it, and it's literally by Simon who's literally a weirdo. They said that all IR has been proven by their 500 years analysis. It's not all IR or even ontological. It's just that extinction reps have justified genocide in the past, but when the extinction outweighs, obviously this outweighs it because epistemology determines your consequences. The only reason that we know things are bad is because of the consequences. They have agreed by saying hypotesting as well, which means that extinction outweighs the magnitude as well. They say that control is bad, but there's no reason that control is bad. Their speech might have been good, grounded in their literature, but they're not explaining in the last page. They must point line against in response to the argument. So the app inherently solves control. We do not solve Trump from nuking people, but we solve the prolif that happens after we do not break the PKD, because Trump will cause other NATO countries to also lose control. Now, just so the anthro views because of the Marshall gaze and that war is repeated, but there's no war about this. And this argument is about extinction reps, which I answered above. They say, yeah.
They also drop explicit judge instruction that they have to win specific link defense or solvency. If we win.
Yeah. They also cannot go for flattening views of ontology because they have to win specific link defense. Our argument, no more why our international relations reps are bad as well, especially because they drop the case.
And if we win solvency, it disproves their link.
And winning solvency disproves their case, and it's at 100, which means that any reason that they have not given a warrant means that you must vote immediately. Now, they say that links to control, we answer that above. They say that we analyze extinction through subject ontology, which causes genocide. The answers as well. Our reps are good because extinction is the worst possible thing, and also they have said conflicts are bad. We're hypotesting. Now, they say that links, now on the perm, they say that links are reasons to reject, on framework first. They have not sent any of this offense, which means that obviously none of the sender responses, also our fairness stuff, also answers as well. Now, on the perm, they say that links are reasons to reject the team, but our argument is that the perm double bind is just dropped. This also answers the third argument about why the perm cannot solve. Our argument is that the perm really is strong enough, then we can have one instance of the app, one instance of anthropocentrism, and still solving the argument. So the only other thing that I have to answer is that the perm fails and that it's fascist, but they drop that they are. They are the people that are one-sided. Their current critiques one-sidedness, but only we have a more have a combined approach to solving the arguments definition because the perm combines the app and the alt, which means that this links to them more.
Good for cross.
Yeah.
Okay. When have we made a link you lose argument in this round?
I think framework says
No,
it.
it's not. It's not talking.
So you won't go for it.
Yeah, we won't go for you lose. We just prove your ontology is wrong. That's reasoned about. negative though. Okay.
Oh, wait. So your win condition is disproving our ontology is
Okay.
wrong.
Well, there's a couple win conditions. One, we can go for terminal defense, which you've dropped, that the Maichi's evidence indicts all of your scenarios because it says even if Congress controls weapons, weapons will still create desires within them. The second win condition we can go for, you want me to explain my win condition?
Well, okay, so presumption is not a win condition.
Oh, well,
Can you explain all the reasons
terminal defense
offensively to
and-
vote no?
Yeah, that's first terminal defense, and we've said reason
Sure.
to vote
Terminal
negative
defense.
off of that is because our offense turns here. Flat ontology is the only risk of solving anything in this round because it would put everything in the same ontological type, which would stop those desires.
Okay,
You've also
it's
dropped the
terminal
framework, from the framework, this is the second one condition. You've dropped the sequencing disad in your rebuttal, there's no answer to it, which says that
You
people,
didn't frontline it.
I did frontline, your only answer is that we need a clash to test this. I said that clash is still possible, you need to prove that your ontology is right, or prove our
Okay,
ontology
so
is wrong.
just to be clear, one, you can say that your main turns case, and second, you can disprove our ontology
Okay.
is bad, correct?
Wait, sorry, what'd you say?
Your two win conditions, one, main turns case, two, disproving our ontology as bad, correct?
Yeah, and we also, our terminal impact of the critique is extinction. The
Yeah.
Grove evidence says Marshall Gaze
Yeah.
culminates in extinction.
I understand that stuff, but the second win condition, to be clear, is disproving our ontological
Yeah.
like assumptions are bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Let's talk about extinction now. You guys say extinction is bad, right?
Yeah.
Where have we made a disagreement with that? Isn't the terminal impact of our critique also extinction?
You think that the terminal impact of your critique is extinction?
Yeah.
You've never heard critiquing extinction. This is the biggest.
No,
history.
I specifically made in my rebuttal that to solve extinction through subject-oriented ontology is bad. We
Wow.
said,
If you want to go here, I would love
yeah,
to.
sure.
go
Read the
here.
line from my evidence that says that
The Grove
extinction.
evidence says,
Yeah, I can
quote,
explain the Grove
attempts to make a claim on whole of the human species
Yeah.
assumes that we can save humanity. This assumption is off the mark.
Yeah.
And then the 500 years thing that you're talking about, it's not about your ontological claim. It's actually about this, which means that this percon magnifies our offense. Then
No.
it says that it's bad. Which will
It really
frequently
doesn't.
cascades into genocide.
I think you're misunderstanding this. The 500 years part was just from the Knight evidence and Maichi's evidence, which explains that the last 5 centuries have culminated in endless war,
What?
which is
No, wait.
Okay, but
This
anyways,
is important. What part? Wait, your only part of this 500 years is the extinction routes part, right?
no, 500 years is just analysis we made off of the Maichi's
Oh, it's
and
just Fremd's analysis.
yeah,
right?
off the Maichi's and Knight evidence because it gives warrants that the reason we've
So
had
it's Fremd's
these,
analysis of IR.
yeah,
Okay.
off the Knight and Maichi's evidence analyzed all IR literature. But anyways, specifically about the Grove part, if you read after the line you read, it says that analyzing it through subject-oriented ontology is the reason why
Disagree.
examining extinction is bad.
Disagree. Can you read a line?
Okay.
I'm staring at it right now. I like.
It's literally
I
cross.
think it would behoove you to explain this. I don't
The
think
Grove evidence explicitly critiques subject-oriented ontology. But yeah.
Control F.
Okay. I'll take a little bit of practice starting out. Specifically says that analyzing extinction for subject-oriented ontology is bad, which is why Marshall Gaze exists right now. But that and Marshall Gaze is from the They also say the application that's Oliver Shea. It's right here. You just make sure you read that. So you should start on the framework. You should say that. And I guess you should know any responses. Okay, so I'm explaining terminal defense. See their extension, they take a big alternative, the only answer is they cannot clash by the terms of ontology. You see that's a prior question because sequencing is to prove your policy action to relate to you to prove that your ontology is right. Does that make sense? Okay. 1 minute 28.
Order will be our framework. Just do our framework, their framework. Okay.
How much prep do you have left?
2 seconds, I think.
2 seconds. Anyone not good?
All responses had to come in the next speech. The K determines their ability to solve any impact which means the prior question. It was literally just dropped in second constructive. None of the warranting from the last speech was in the second constructive, which means that you should just default to this. Even then, none of their arguments are really new. They were just making repeated extrapolations. Now, they clearly just came into this round and did not understand our critique. This should be a TKO. Our framework interpretation value the theory of power before the app, but for the hypothetical consequence. We agree that they get to weigh the case, but they've dropped that they physically cannot weigh it if they're not winning ontology because they've dropped the sequencing distance in their last speech. They say that Clash frames it out. They've dropped that they cannot win offense and you cannot solve impacts that they've dropped that our ontology prerequisite is a prerequisite of that. They've specifically dropped that the sequencing distance. Every app impact approach is linked to the K. The scenarios are proof. The anthropocentric management politics of objects have failed. The app cannot justify links to the K outweighing our impacts unless they beat our theory of power and prove this obviously is possible. It's a technical requirement to an ontology before framing. They say the Clash is key to test our model. Again, they can just read that their ontology is good or that our ontological reps are bad, but there's no reason that we can see that they get to win the case, which means that they were able to Clash and they just literally did not contest our ontological prerequisites, which means that there's no way they can solve the case, which I'll get to here. Their framework. We'll concede they can weigh the case, but they've dropped that to test ontology to see if the framework is right. They say that we didn't read subjectivity shift, and we'll concede to that. They say that links must be unique to the consequences, but again, they have dropped hypotesting, which said that if the next speaks first, we just need to read links to the reds, which they endorsed. And they just clean conceded that we read an extinction impact, which we explicitly read a link to the K, which said the growth card says that trying to solve extinction under subject-oriented ontology and anthropocentric views is uniquely bad because it drives genocidal logics. It was a dropped card. Now, the K. Anthropocentric subject-oriented on theorization insists humans wield control over objects but ignore how weapons incite human desires for safe activities as might choose. The one I see never safe in anthropocentric management policy, traditional IR attempts to control safe ops by changing which actor management weaponry ignores materiality, agency, overrating human intentionality, obscuring the role of weapons, reproduce the infinite regression of genocides, extinctions, as much as deny the app, modern martial gaze and view weapons, use guarantees about the policy failure per growth, vote neg, direct the reductivism, subject-oriented ontology in favor of flat, refuse to overbind ornament objects, and instead place them all as the same ontological type beings, only the neg has a risk to solve the instinctive logics and app forms. Now, they say that the role of the battle, first they conceded our role of the battle clean. The role of the battle is to vote for the team which best deconstructs out anthropocentric subjectivity. The only risk of solving anything that has been tried before and will be tried again. They say that they've dropped that it's any risk of defense because it collapses to R is a better debater. Vote for the better debater under our model. Now, on their K. They first go for the psychoanalysis argument. Again, we didn't read psychoanalysis, we found flat ontology. They say that consequences prove things are bad, but we have consequences. They literally write an extinction card. They say eternally solve, but they literally cannot solve. They've conceded that their logics entrench, their logics create the idea that their logics do not acknowledge the fact that weapons control what we do in the first place. They've dropped the specific Marshall Gaze empiric that says that 500 years of history prove my use because they've dropped that it would create instinctive logics. Then they say that Grove is wrong. Again, they've dropped that the Marshall Gaze about viewing weapons that we can control means that weapons inherently influence our desires. They say extinction forms are good. We've read an extinction impact. Lastly, on the perm. They drop that the perm necessarily can't solve the affirmative traits off the flat ontology. Explain how you're supposed to make an investment into flat ontology and say to be able to do things. What?
Brian evidence too.
Yeah, and Brian evidence is dropped. It says that flat ontology is the app is not compatible with it because it's investment into subject-oriented ontology.
6 seconds.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Wait. Okay. Order's gonna be case, art of framework debate, okay. Everyone good? 100% of the case must outweigh a mitigated case. They dropped 100% that NATO withdraws and never right now, which causes mass proliferation and escalation. 100% means that I don't have to explain solvency after they dropped the solvency anyways. The home evidence indicates that the app imposes reputational cost on Congress, which pacifies Trump. And wait, they dropped the app, breaks the PQD, which prevents courts from ruling against NATO, which is a drop argument. Now the way, even if they do get to weigh the case, our argument definitely outweighs first. Trial unis is conceded, which means the extension is now in either world. Second, they've also. Okay, framework, doesn't matter. Extend our framework interpretation, the affirmative only guard office. Extend our framework interpretation, weigh the case against competitive alternative, only supposed to be contextual. The desirability of the plan, fairness and clash are both massive impacts. One, fairness outweighs. The paradox is entirely dropped. Every argument requires realization and it seeks stability, which is the drop argument. So they rely on two. Second is clash. They drop clash the entirety of the K. Our argument is that the only way for their model to actualize in the real world in which we can develop real obstacles to break down the Anthropocene is we can test over the model and engage in third and fourth level testing. This is a drop argument. So in any risk the outcome equal means auto affirm on framework. Now the response is one. They say you can still weigh the case. Our argument is weighing weighing ontology prior to the case is exactly our argument. It's unpredictable to assume that we have to defend our ontology, for example, because it is not predictable. There's infinite amounts of ontology the app can possibly defend, which is our argument. So even if we do get to weigh the case after obtaining ontology, arguing that sequencing exactly is unpredictable. Second, they say that we cannot weigh ontology that was done above. Obviously, the framing is exactly unpredictable. Second, they say links to the res. This is fine. We'll just win the weighting debate anyways. And obviously, they did not win links to the res because our extinction assumptions are as bad, and they still read links into ontology, which means that this framer frames up all those links anyways. Second, they say that they read an extinction impact. That's fine, but arguing that the only way to get this extinction impact is by reading links to assumptions, which our framer frames out anyways. Now, the frame issue for this debate, number one, is the role of the ballot. They dropped the role of the ballot to vote for the better debater, but they also dropped the differentiation between the role of the ballot. Arguments that competing roles of the ballot are relevant to the question of the rest of the debate, so you have to evaluate the impact calculus of winning framework is obviously sufficient. Second, they dropped no blanket index. They've not read once a piece of solvency deficit, not one piece of link events to the home, or any of our piece of link events. The winning solvency is sufficient because they dropped it. Obviously, the evidence does not assume ours, even if you think it's assumed. Argument is flagged and dropped, so no new responses. Now,
Answer no new second rebuttal response.
yeah, there it is. They say no new second rebuttal responses. They dropped several arguments from Andy's rebuttal. Even if I drop the number one, it's justified because it's norm in, for example, second rebuttal to answer arguments and constructive. So it's out sequences. Second, they also dropped it's key to test their model because the more, for example, responses that we have, the more. Yeah.
But we're not new.
Also, there's no, it was not new rebuttal. Anyways, now their case. The only thing I have to win is the permutation double blind. They massively mishandled. They say the perm can't solve. The permutation double blind is massively distinct. Our argument is that if the alternative is so strong to overcome every single entropy structure in the status quo, it is sufficient to do it with the affirmative. Otherwise, the alternative fails, which means you vote off on presumption because the app has no risk. They have no risk of offense.
Ontology is wrong. The 500 years are the extinction rate,
Yeah.
not IR.
Also, the ontology link is wrong. It's about 500 years of extinction reps, not the Anthropocene. So there's no risk of ontology. And they have not
explained my weapons.
Yeah, and they've not explained why weapons create desires. So you should hold line. Anyways, Clash frames it out because Brent's testing their model.
Alright, y'all good.
Yeah. Crossfire. I'll take first question. Starting now. So let's talk about the clash argument. If you did something that was ontologically racist or ontologically violent, but it was unpredictable, does that mean we shouldn't read a reason?
I don't need to explain why we were ontologically racist.
We read reasons why we were ontologically violent.
Wait, you can explain why you think we're ontologically wrong, but I also disagree with that.
We said it creates genocidal logics. How is that not
Our
violent?
argument is simply that the way we can determine whether or not, for example, something is true or not is by engaging with it on face value, which your model precludes because it's unpredictable.
Wait, also, we cannot go for the genocidal logics link. You have said that you also have an extinction
Wait,
impact. This is
okay,
precisely
wait, I think
you guys yeah, go ahead.
you can't defend your links in this round because you have said the reason why the affirmative works is because Congress can control these things. We have said that is the link to the critique.
Your assumption that is true is linked to the critique.
But to win that is offense, you have to win your theory of ontology, which
Yeah,
explains why we are
what
wrong.
is the one answer to why flat ontology is wrong in this round? Just explain to me why flat ontology is
You did
wrong.
not
What was
extend
the response?
psycho because you did not.
No, you
You didn't extend psycho in your last
It's
speech.
not, it's not psycho.
Can I-
Okay, no,
can I-
real question. My question is very
Can
simple.
I answer the question?
You go.
Wait, yeah.
No, man.
My question is, why is flat ontology bad or wrong in this round?
Okay, the burden of proof comes before the burden of rejoinder. Like I would be astounded if anyone in this room can explain your argument back to you because you have just not sufficiently
I'm
extended
sure
it in this
Sky,
round.
Bashir, and Sophia can all explain it.
Also, you've also dropped that you've dropped our case solvency
Okay,
arguments.
have we not dropped the case? Bro, the Mighty's evidence literally says that.
Your answers to our framework were
How about this?
atrocious. Your answers to our framework were atrocious.
Okay,
How about this?
How would that not frame it out?
How about this? Can y'all explain why our ontology is wrong?
yeah, I can explain this. The Mighty's evidence says that when you use subject-oriented ontology, and you try to control weapons, weapons creates desires within you. So even if Congress controls weapons, weapons will just create the same desires that they did to Trump, which means all of your scenarios are not unique.
How do you know they did that to Trump?
The Mighty's evidence explains that, whenever
This is
humans.
your assertion.
No, it's
What are you talking about? The Mighty's
whatever.
evidence is talking about the way that
Okay,
everyone views the
Can we have
world
one?
now.
Yeah, you guys have a question.
Can you explain why justifying our ontology before weighing cases
Yeah,
is predictable?
sure. Because justify. Why is it unpredictable?
Why is it predictable?
Okay, because to win your policy actions are good, you need to win that your epistemology and ontological claims.
Why is that
or that
predictable?
policy claims are because if you don't win ontology, then you don't know if your policy action will actually work.
That's not a reason why it's predictable. It's just the reason why I guess.
We know.
also read
Because
like,
to
why
win
is it predictable?
policy actions are good, you need to win ontology, right?
What? No.
Because okay, if you don't win the ontology, then if your ontology is wrong, then obviously your policy action will be wrong. Which is why we have said your ontology is wrong in this round.
The reason is predictable.
Yeah, it's predictable
But
because
also
to
it's
win your
not our
policy action is good. You need
And
to
again, we also made the arguments that if that just because it's even if you win that it's unpredictable, having a violent ontological lens is not a reason to not have
your
defend a good
explanation of
ontology.
ontology that let you explain was that it creates desires in Trump to cause wars. I don't think that's like racist.
No,
or
but you
it
drop the
also,
Grove
like,
evidence. The
invalid.
Grove evidence literally says that it creates extinctive and genocidal logics.
That's about extinction reps.
Okay, sure. Framework K, starting on our framework actually.
Our framework interpretation is founded in the theory power of the AF for type level implementation. They've dropped the sequence to decide that every AF impact push is a link to the critique. Their scenarios to prove that any of the preceding management laws of objects have failed. The AF cannot justify links to the K outweighing our impacts unless they beat the theory of power. They just say that it's unpredictable. They've dropped that every policy action needed to be proved good. It needs to win that ontology is right in the first place, which means it's predictable to prove that your affirmative is good in this specific round. They've dropped that this indicts all of their framework interpretations because they can weigh cases. They just need to prove their ontology is right, which they have zero warrants on the flow about why subject origin ontology is right in this specific round, which means I'll listen to the critique here now. And the preceding subject origin theorizations is humans wield control over objects. We ignore how weapons incite human desires which shape subjectivities. That's my cheese, which means it is terminal defense of the affirmative case because even if Congress controls it, they will not be able to control just create the same values. So want to see never escapes the and the preceding management policy traditional higher attempts to control state violence by changing which actor managed weaponry, ignores material and agency over during human intentionality and obscuring the role of weapons reproducing infinite regressions of genocide and extinction, which means we link to extinction and they've not an explicit line about why their extinction is worse. The AF's modern martial gaze and views of weapons zooms guarantee policy failure. Per vote nine should reject the reductivism of subject origin ontology in favor of flat ontology. They have no coherent response to flat ontology, which is a risk of offense. Only the has risk of solvency over extensive logics. They've also dropped the role of ballot that because of the uniqueness, the only thing you can do in this round is deconstruct anti-preceding subjectivities, epistemology first. They just say their rule about subsume this, but no, they've dropped all the warrants about why all the uniqueness goes to our side on this question. Because if wars has been accumulating for the last 500 years, you need to do something to solve that, which you can do by voting for the alternative. Now they say ontology is wrong because some indict on 500 years of history. They misunderstand the argument. Grove is not talking about 500 years of history. That's extrapolation I made up my cheese and night that say war will only be recreated because we think we can control weapons. We also did not read psychoanalysis, so they get no offense off of those things. Now, on the permutation, they've dropped that the perm necessarily can't solve. The Bible evidence was really explicit on this, that the affirmative trades off with flat ontology. The demand for human inclusion is like, even then, just vote for a version of the alternative that is more fleshed out. And even then, they've dropped that the AF has no net benefit because Mike just says that it will recreate the same desires, which means they have no net benefit, and you're just voting on the perm. It's so easy. They've just misunderstood the critique. There's no warrants why subject ontology is good on your flow. It's so easy.
It'll be AF framework okay.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Extend the AF. Currently the PQD is weak. Currently PQD is strong, but the AF destroys the PQD by destroying doctrines, and that is good because it prevents, because it allows courts to check back Trump from pulling out of NATO, otherwise the cause extinction, the prolif, and you start losing pressure. That was dropped. Now, framework is a win condition for our argument. Their entire argument is that we must prove our ontology before weighing our consequences. That is unpredictable, which is dropped. There are two in-round impacts that must outweigh, because all of their arguments are post-fiat. One, fairness. They needed two, which is why it's an axe of impact. I do not care if you're ideological, because they just dropped this for every single speech. They dropped that they, that them playing Libelat and extending dropped arguments seek the validity of our argument. Second, clash. If you believe that their ontology is true and you believe that their case is a good idea, vote AF. It's the only way to export these models in the real world through in-depth advocacy skills, through a stasis that is the consequences. We only need to win that they were unpredictable, which they definitely were. Now, they say that we dropped their framework offense, but they dropped ours, and we obviously out-sequenced them. Look, their interpretation is just tautological. They have said that their framework offense comes first because, quote, AF impacts are a link. And the reason that they think that is true is because, quote, we need to win a theory of power first. Our argument is that the theory of power is inherently unpredictable, which means that we are indicting the reason why they think that framework is true. Their entire justification for framework is self-referential, which is why we obviously outframe it. The only thing that they can possibly vote for them as a roll of the ballot, but they dropped that this is question begging, and there's a question the rest of the debate. And also, we have just extended competing with the ballots, and we too have uniqueness, and we too have a dropped impact, which means that it's simply a question of who has more offense under our framework interpretations. Now, everything else does not matter because it's post-fiat, and they have not had an in-round fairness or clash offense that can be exported to the real world, but I'll answer it here. Ontology is wrong, which is the last thing that I need to win. Their only explanation is that their card is not 500 years, and it was just analysis. But even if it's analysis, how can you vote on analytical analysis from William Fremd? You cannot explain, and they definitely cannot explain why, for instance, Trump is only rated by desires, and there's no card, which is that you have a high threshold. They've also dropped that they have not yet our specific arguments. Specificity must be key, because they've just dropped it as well. Lastly, they say that their arguments are about extinction reps. This is not, this makes our offense, and the permit does not work, because they can overcome the AF, or it can't solve.
Great.
Great debate, y'all.